I would now like to introduce our esteemed chief guest for today. Mr. Nandan Nilekani was recently the chairman of the Unique Identification Authority of India, UIDAI, in the rank of a cabinet minister. Mr. Nilekani was previously the co-founder of Infosys Technologies Limited, a company co-founded in 1981. Born in Bengaluru, Mr. Nilekani received his bachelor's degree from IIT Bombay. In 2006, he was awarded the Padma Bhushan. He was also named Businessman of the Year by Forbes Asia. Time magazine listed him as one of the 100 most influential people in the world twice, in 2006 and in 2009. He is also the author of Imagining India. Foreign Policy magazine listed him as one of the top 100 global thinkers in 2010. He won the Economist Social and Economic Innovation Award for his leadership of India's Unique Identification Initiative, Aadhaar, in 2015. Sir, we thank you so much for taking out time from your busy schedule to motivate all our young entrepreneurs. I welcome you to our dais today.
Wonderful. I heard the 6 presentations and all of them were very original ideas and I think very promising ideas. So I'm really delighted that the quality of ideas and the quality of entrepreneurial teams is so high. I've been an entrepreneur. I think when you think about it, Infosys was probably India's first major startup in 1981. And I was involved with running Infosys for close to 30 years. And that was a very exciting experience, taking a company from just an idea to a multi-billion-dollar corporation, listing it in the global markets, doing all that, building a global brand and so on. And then I did something very different. At the invitation of the Prime Minister, Dr. Manmohan Singh, I joined the government to develop this unique ID project, which now has crossed about 900 million people have the ID. So it's the world's largest ID program, and it was done in 5 years. So the growth of Aadhaar IDs is faster than the growth of WhatsApp. So just to give you a sense. So in the last few months, I've been engaging with the ecosystem of startups and entrepreneurship, and I'm really excited and fascinated to see what's happening. I think having been in this business for a long time, I think now it's really reached a tipping point. I think the number of young companies and startups is steaming. There are literally hundreds of them. I live in Koramangala, which is the epicenter of this business, so I can walk to about 100 companies from my house. I don't even have to drive. And it's and a lot of very exciting ideas and very, very ambitious and very, very future-looking people. Other day I met a guy. I'd called a few of these startups home for dinner because Vinod Khosla was in town, and he wanted to meet some startups. So I called a few of these guys, and one of them I found was just 27 years old. A guy called Shashank who runs Practo, and he told me he began his career by participating in business competitions, and today he's got millions of users. So I guess all of you can aspire to be the next Shashank. But what I want to talk to you about is actually something which I've been working on, which I think is going to be the basis for dramatic transformation and creation of many, many very, very interesting companies. And let me just outline to you what that is. I think a number of things have come together which will really enable us to reimagine or redesign many industries. Clearly, one obvious thing is the smartphone, and you saw that many of the business plans today were using the smartphone as the device for delivery, the one which has about chronic treatment as well as the one on the automobile repair stuff. But fundamentally, if you look at what's happening in India today, smartphones have gone up dramatically. We're looking at more like 150 million smartphones. The addition rate is about 20 million a quarter. And we're looking at about 400 to 500 smartphones by 2017, 2018. So there's a dramatic expansion. In other words, everybody will have a phone and more than half the people will have a smartphone. So that's one clear thing. And that obviously opens up a whole way of looking at applications, whether it's an Ola kind of thing or whether it's for chronic management. But the fact that everybody will have, at least half the people will have a smartphone and everybody will have a phone, itself is one fundamental infrastructure which I think has never happened before. The second thing is the Aadhaar platform. India is the only country in the world to have a digital identity platform. And as I said, today about 920 million people have an Aadhaar. It will be 1 billion people by March 2016, and the entire population in the next couple of years. So this is again a unique thing where you have a digital identity which is unique for 1 billion people. And the third big thing which is going to happen is that everybody in the country will have a payment instrument. They will have a wallet or a bank account. That's already happening, partly because the government has been pushing bank accounts. Financial inclusion has been a big idea for a long time. But now we're seeing the point where in the next 3 to 4 years, you can expect universalization of bank accounts. And that is accelerated by the government pushing it through the Nandan Yojana program, as well as the recent decision of the RBI to give 11 payment bank licenses and 10 small bank licenses, which is 21 bank licenses. And when you think about it, if you look at the history of Indian banking, for a long time, India did not have any new private banks. If you go back and look at what happened when Indira Gandhi was Prime Minister, we actually nationalized banks. And you had basically two rounds of nationalization, 1968 and 1980. And then from 1980 to 1994, no new banks were allowed. And from 1994 to 2014, we allowed, 14 banks? 12 to 14 banks. And now in the space of 1 month, we have given 21 bank licenses. Think about it. In 1 month, you've given more bank licenses than the last 40 years. So that is the kind of revolution that is going to happen. So the combination of the Nandan Yojana program, which is pushing more accounts, as well as these 21 new high-tech banks, means that you can expect universalization of payment of bank accounts with everybody in India. And this is what this government and Arvind Subramaniam calls JAM. J is Jandhan, A for Aadhaar, M for mobile. So think about a world where everyone in the country has a bank account, everyone in the country has a digital ID, Aadhaar, and everybody in the country has a mobile phone, of which more than half or 3/4 will be smartphones. Because smartphones are only going to keep falling in price. Today we're getting smartphones at 4,000-5,000 rupees, and all the indications when I talk to vendors of smartphones and the developments happening in China and so on, indicate that smartphone prices can further drop maybe to 2,000 or 3,000 rupees. So you can expect that to grow dramatically. So imagine this world where everybody has a bank account, everybody has Aadhaar, and everybody has a mobile phone. So that's the JAM sort of layer. Now on top of this, in the last 5 years, we have built several layers, which we now call the India stack. This is a term that we at iSpirit have coined. And the India stack is a set of APIs that sit on top of this JAM layer. So what is this stack? The first element of this stack is the fact that with a digital ID like Aadhaar, I can do online authentication of identity. Now, authentication of identity is a very important thing. I mean, especially as you go more and more online, as you go more and more digital, as you do more and more services remotely over the smartphone or the internet, how do you know the person is really the person they claim to be? Historically, when we did authentication using something that you possessed. For example, when you use your debit card or credit card in an ATM, that is called as a what you have kind of an authentication, because the fact that you possess the card is a way of telling the system that you're indeed that person. Of course, somebody can take your card, but the card possession is a factor of authentication. The second factor of authentication that is typical is what you know. So for example, when you log on to your Gmail or Hotmail or whatever, Outlook email ID, you use a password. So the system says, okay, you know this password and therefore you must be the guy accessing that mail. Or when you access a banking transaction, you use a PIN number, a personal identification number. So whether it's a PIN number or a password, it's an example of a what you know kind of identification. And as you know, to reduce fraud and to make the transactions more secure, you have what is called as requirement that you need to have two-factor authentication. So today when I use my debit card, they also ask me to enter a PIN. So the debit card is a proof of what I have, and the PIN is a proof of what I know. And the assumption is that if you have two factors, the strength of the authentication goes up. Now what Aadhaar has done, it provides online authentication of who you are using biometrics. Never happened anywhere in the world before at this scale. And the biometrics that are used for authentication in Aadhaar The first one is the fingerprint. So today, if you have seen, there are many, many devices where you can put a fingerprint and then confirm, give your Aadhaar number, and the Aadhaar system will confirm that you're the person you claim to be. Or there is iris authentication using the eye, and now there are many devices where I can just look at a device and it will send a message and check that it is the person you are. So suddenly you have a new method of authentication which is very secure, which is who you are using a biometric feature like a fingerprint or the iris. So you have a new type of authentication. At the same time, you are now entering a situation where everybody has a mobile phone in their pocket. So you can think about, if everybody is going to have a mobile phone in their pocket, then why can't the mobile phone itself be a factor of authentication? Because you can prove that somebody's mobile number is his number. You can do all kinds of OTP and all that stuff. So fundamentally, in the old world, two-factor authentication was done. One factor was possession of a card, and second factor was possession of a number or a password. In the new world, one factor of authentication is going to be your phone, and the second factor of authentication is going to be your finger or your eye. Now think about it. Suddenly we have gone away from having to remember passwords and remember PIN numbers, and nor do we have to carry a card in our wallet. The phone in our pocket is already a factor of authentication, and my finger and my eye is a second factor of authentication. This is possible today. We are currently working on phones with about 4 vendors where they're going to embed the iris camera inside the phone. And this is similar. If people have seen the iPhone has a fingerprint reader called Touch ID. And when you use Apple Pay, you just touch the Apple Pay and it works. But that's a proprietary system. It's inside Apple. You can't access that. But in the new phones that are coming out in the next 6 to 9 months, you'll have smartphones costing $100, 5,000 rupees, which have an iris camera. And with that device, you can do one-click, two-factor authentication. Imagine, I just look at my phone, click, and I have two-factor authentication. So that creates a level of convenience. In other words, you can get the Apple Pay experience on every phone. It doesn't have to be only from Apple. So think about it. On one side, you have the whole universal bank accounts, universal Aadhaar numbers, universal mobile phones. And then using this authentication, you create one-factor, two-factor, single-click authentication. So that's one layer. Authentication is one layer. The second layer is what is called as electronic KYC, or electronic know your customer. Now, what this is that when you register into the Aadhaar system, you also give your name and address, and if you wish, you can give your mobile number and email ID. And this KYC, this Aadhaar, which is a proof of identity, and your name and address, which is proof of address, is sufficient to open a bank account. In other words, I don't know if people realize, but it's very difficult to open bank accounts, especially if you're a poor person with no ID. Because you go to the bank and they'll say, give me your ID and give me a copy of your house rental certificate or some nonsense. So it's very difficult to open bank accounts. But with Aadhaar eKYC, you can open a bank account because Aadhaar name and address is sufficient KYC to open a bank account. This is under the legal system where, there's a legal system called the PMLA Act, which essentially says with what kind of documents you can open a bank account, and Aadhaar meets the requirement. But the good news is that not only I can use the KYC of Aadhaar to open a bank account, I can use the same KYC to buy an insurance policy, buy a stock market mutual fund, buy a pension, or buy a SIM card for a phone. So for the first time, you have a common KYC across all products in the financial sector and your SIM card. And tomorrow it could be something else. And this KYC is an electronic KYC. It's not a paper-based KYC. Today, if you go and want to buy a phone, the fellow says, give me a Xerox of your passport, or this and all that. All that goes away. And suppose I want to open a bank account in this new world, I go to an outlet, I put my finger or check my eye, and authorize the Aadhaar system to release my name and address to the bank, and the bank opens the account instantly. So for the first time, you have technology which allows you to in 1 minute, 1 second, open a bank account electronically, in real time, paperless, and very secure. So that means everybody can open a bank account, buy an insurance product, get a pension fund, buy a mutual fund, get a SIM card. Everything now can be done electronically in real time when I go to buy in the shop. So think about it. So this is the second layer. The first layer was authentication. The second layer is KYC. Now there's a third layer which has been published called e-sign. E-sign is a way to use my Aadhaar authentication to digitally sign a document. Now, the thing is, when you have a document which you need to send to someone, you have to sign it and send it to make sure that it is non-repudiated, that it's secure, it's encrypted, and that it meets the goals. And historically, when you wanted to do a digital signature, it was very cumbersome. You had to get a dongle and put that in your laptop and all that. Now your Aadhaar number is sufficient to do a digital signature. So the same device where you can do authentication and KYC, you can also sign a document. And I'll explain to you what all this means from an app point of view soon. So the third layer of this is the ability to digitally sign any document from your phone using the Aadhaar authentication. The fourth layer in this architecture is what we call as the digital locker. And what this is an electronic way of creating a repository of documents that are digitally signed. So just like I can sign documents, I need a place to store these documents, and I need a place to retrieve these documents in a secure way. Think of it like your Google Drive or Dropbox, but for secure documents that are signed. So the idea is that there will be a network of repositories, which are all essentially have a license to run a repository, which will keep these signed documents, which you can access anytime. Now, these signed documents will come in two ways. I can sign a document and store it in the repository, or somebody who deals with you signs documents of yours and keeps it in the repository and gives you the address of that document. So let's say that you guys are graduating from IIM Bangalore. Today we have this whole, we keep hearing about fake degrees. All these characters are fake degrees and all that. So how do you solve that fake degree problem? So the way it will work tomorrow is IIM Bangalore will take your degree certificate and all your transcripts, all those A's and B's and all whatever you guys got, and sign them and store them for safekeeping in a repository of your choice, or they will have a repository. It's like, so your degree certificate and your transcript will get signed and kept in a repository. Now, when you go for a job interview, or when you're doing your own startup preferably, or you're applying for a further degree, PhD in management or whatever hell it is, instead of Xeroxing it and sending it, you just tell that other side that just go to this address in the repository, take my degree certificate, and use it in your document. And that is, you can trace it down to the fact it came from IIM Bangalore to that repository. So suddenly you can build a completely paperless system of document management. So when you graduate, your degree certificate will go there. When you say do an M&A and all that, those memorandum documents can go there. So everything can be in this repository system. So this enables you to create a completely paperless way of doing things. All this from your phone. All this is from your phone. And then the one more thing which we are designing, and I'm an advisor to NPCI, which is the National Payment Corporation, is our challenge was how do we make sure that when people go to mobile payments, those mobile payments are interoperable. I don't know whether you know what happens. Typically today, when you get a license, the RBI did a very smart thing. They wanted to make these payments popular, so they came out with a category of providers called prepaid payment instruments, PPIs, and gave license to lots of entrepreneurs to launch wallets. And the most well-known, of course, is Paytm and MobiKwik and all these guys. Now, these are typically what we call as a person-to-merchant kind of wallets. So when I have a Paytm wallet or a MobiKwik wallet, I can use that to make a payment at a merchant that accepts Paytm or a merchant that accepts MobiKwik. And if you, for example, if you guys use Uber, Uber uses Paytm, so I use my Paytm wallet to pay Uber. So this is called as a P2M. But each of these wallets is essentially an island. In other words, I can only make a payment to another wallet from the same company, or I can make a payment to a merchant where my wallet is accepted. But that's not really the ideal way. Think about it. Suppose if you had a cell phone, and my cell phone, I could only talk to other Airtel users, and your cell phone could only talk to other Vodafone users. Not a very healthy situation. You can't really have a conversation. They'll ask you, which phone do you have? So the way to solve that problem is to create an interoperable mobile payment system where I don't need to know where your bank account is or where your wallet is. And that will allow person-to-person payments. So if I meet you and I have to transfer 500 rupees to you, I don't ask you, do you have MobiKwik, do you have HDFC Chiller, do you have ICICI Pockets or whatever it is. I just send money to you. This thing is called as a unified payment interface, which is being developed by NPCI, which is currently under development in Chennai, and it will be launched by December. So this will allow interoperable mobile payments from any mobile phone to any mobile phone, from any bank account to any bank account, and so on. And this will directly complement the rise of these new banks. These new banks will then create what they can all sell their payment products, but UPI will allow it to be interoperable. And then, is it getting too complicated? So anyway, and then the final layer of this is what is going to happen because of the data explosion which is coming now. Now, why is this data explosion coming? Essentially, India is going to go from being data poor to data rich in the next 3 to 4 years. The reason for that is that once you go digital, the more you go digital, the more you have a digital trail of your transactions, what people call as digital exhaust. So for example, on your smartphone, all your user pattern, now they figure out which apps are loaded and how much time you spend on which app and all these kind of things. If you are using digital payments, it gives a record of your payments. If you're a taxpayer, today the income tax can give you back your tax at source deductions. Your social media activity is another source of information. So suddenly there is all this data which is getting created at a phenomenal pace, which is not, it's all linked to all this stuff I talked about. Now, question is, the way it works in the Western model is that data is then used by companies to make money off you, right? So you'll open an account in some company which provides you some social media stuff, and you post your photographs and do whatever, and then they start sending you ads. They see your behavior on their product, they know you like this kind of stuff, they send you ads, so they make money off you. But suppose we flip it around and say, that data is my data. It's my data, it's the data I create. Is there a way that I, as an empowered consumer, can get benefit out of my data? And for that, you need an architecture which allows me to access my data with my permission to use for my benefit. So this is completely opposite of where the privacy is going in the West. We are saying empower the individual to access his own data. And the reason you can do that is because we have the world's only online authentication system. So once I can do biometric authentication on a cell phone, then I can send a request to a data store to say, give me my data, right? You can do that at scale. The system that we have built is designed for 100 million transactions a day. So millions of people around the country can say, release my data from the tax thing and give it to this person, or release my payment data, give it to Y person. So suddenly, by creating this consent architecture using authentication, I can take all these data sources and get my data back. Now, how does that work? For example, one of the big challenges we have in the banking sector is credit. How do we give credit? Very, very few Indians get credit. Only 3% of Indian businesses get credit from the formal system. They're all poor fellows that run around. Now, suppose my data exhaust, I can now unlock it and give it to the lender and say, look at my record of payments. Look at the fact that I've been consistent in my payments. Look at the fact that I pay taxes. Look at the fact that I have so many friends, so if something goes wrong, I can rely on them. So once I can unlock my data and share it with a lending organization, then I can get instant real-time credit. That's an example of how I can use my data to improve my life. Or I can create data of the work I've done. Suppose I'm a very talented carpenter. How do I, when I go for a new job, how do I tell the guy that I'm a good carpenter? I can create data from my previous work, share it with him and say, look, this is what I've done elsewhere. And it'll be all non-repudiatable data, so it'll be authentic, so I can get a better rate. Or if I'm a patient, I go to my doctor, and the doctor says, I want to see your old ultrasounds or your ECGs or whatever. All I have to do is go to that data store and say, get my ECG and give it to this doctor so he can do a better checkup. So fundamentally, once I have the ability for users to give consent to use their data for their benefit, you have flipped the whole argument. So what we have today is an extraordinary stack. Authentication of 1 billion people. First of all, at the bottom we have everyone has a bank account, everyone has a mobile phone, everyone has Aadhaar. Using that, I can authenticate 1 billion people. I can do a KYC for 1 billion people. I can sign, 1 billion people can sign documents from their phones. 1 billion people can store all the documents electronically in a repository. 1 billion people can transact from one phone to another phone using the payment, interoperable payments. And 1 billion people can use consent to get their data out of various systems and give it to get a loan, to get a job, or to get a better medical treatment, and so on. All this stuff is in the pike. It's going to be there out there. A lot of it is already there, and some of it will be there in the next 1 year. So that means that every business can be reimagined. Why do we need to go to a bank branch? Why do we need to go to an ATM? Why do we need to go anywhere? On my phone, I can open a bank account, I can withdraw money, I can deposit money, I can apply for a loan. Everything that I historically did by going to a physical location, I can do from my phone. Why do I need to have, how do I improve my life? I can use all this infrastructure and create a record of my skills and apply for a better job, and so on. So fundamentally, we now have the infrastructure to redefine every business. And that stuff is not very far away. It's all here. And when you think about it, think about what happened in the West with the internet and GPS. If you know the history of internet and GPS, the internet was actually designed for government purposes. If you look at the history of the internet, 40 years back, they developed something called TCP/IP protocol, which allowed two computers to talk to each other. It was done because the US Department of Defense wanted a secure way of communication. And then the TCP/IP protocol then led to the World Wide Web about 30 years back. And the World Wide Web, not 30, maybe 25 years back. And then the World Wide Web led to the browser, Mosaic, which led to Netscape, which led to Google, which led to Facebook, which led to all this stuff. Suddenly you have this trillion-dollar industry, but that fundamental industry innovation is based on government infrastructure called internet. The same thing happens with GPS. If you look at the history of global positioning systems, GPS was designed again by the US Department of Defense for the purpose of accurate missile guidance and so on, because they had to know the exact latitude and longitude of a submarine or a missile and so on. But that was about 15 years back, was put for commercial use. Today, you cannot have an Ola or an Uber without the internet or the GPS, because you have the smartphone has a GPS, it knows your location, there's a map inside, whether there's a Google map or Apple map. That map, then you have all these other taxi guys roaming around, then you call the guy, he knows how to come. All that is happening because of the platform of GPS, the platform of the internet, platform of the smartphone. So we have created a whole industry of innovation around GPS and the smartphone. And that has created literally $1 trillion or $2 trillion of market capitalization. Now think about it. In India today, we have these platforms, 1 billion people with bank accounts, 1 billion people with Aadhaar numbers, 1 billion people with mobile phones. They can authenticate, they can do a KYC, they can sign the document, they can keep a repository, they can do interoperable payments, and they can give consent for the data to be used anywhere. So how much do you think of value will get created? Think about it. So I hope you guys see what I'm talking about, and I do hope that this innovative platforms being created will lead to lots and lots of successful companies, many of them by people in this room. Thank you very much.